I've played tons of games, but there are also tons of games that I own, some that I've never played, and they just kind of sit there. My whole gimmick is that I give control of what I play to my viewers on Twitch, and I've been doing that for 7 years. It helps me figure out what I want to do on a platform that is notorious for causing burnout. Without you all, YouTube and Twitch, I would only play the good ones, and that would bore me tremendously. Usually I don't tend to put any mind to the games that I own that I haven't played, and I really didn't plan on making a video about it until one lucky firefighter, Jeff Daigle5487, during the Firefighter monthly giveaway, asked me to talk about 10 games I own but I've never played. For the sake of argument, I'm going to focus on ones that I am interested in versus the ones that I know are going to be a bad time. Let's begin. Police Quest is an awesome franchise from an era where the adventure genre was being shaped and molded into something from nothing, and I appreciate that. It's a big reason why I hold Sierra on such a high pedestal. Now, if you know anything about the Sierra era of point and clicks, they tended to have the word quest in them. King's Quest, Space Quest, Quest for Glory. Whatever the first word was, that was the setting. And in the case of Police Quest, it was a solid game where we could play as a police officer following procedure to the T and more. The original games were designed by Jim Walls. He was a former California Highway Patrol officer turned video game designer, and his expertise played into the realism of the first Police Quest games. But corporate competition drew Jim away from Sierra, and in his place was Daryl F. Gates, the father of SWAT. Unfortunately, once it turned to SWAT, the franchise went all over the place. I do own this game, and I do want to check it out, because after this particular game, the series is going to go downhill pretty fast. For a long time, folks told me I wouldn't like anything from Atlus's Megami Tensei line. They said the fact that I was annoyed by JRPGs or gimmicky games at the time, it would drive me insane, that I wouldn't like it. And guess what? Digital Devil's Story Megami Tensei is hands down one of my favorite Famicom games, and I don't say that lightly. I absolutely adore it. To be able to recruit demons, have a conversation with them, merge the demons that you capture, create more powerful monsters, crawl through a dungeon in a map that I created, it's basically Pokemon with demons. What more could you ask for? With me enjoying this game so much, I've not only been interested in checking out the sequel, Digital Devil's Story Megami Tensei 2, which I do own, but also reading the trilogy of novels that the entire franchise is based on. Speaking of the trilogy, did you know that Megami Tensei started off as a serial for the OPC magazine? Yeah, that was a big chungus of a magazine too. I don't even know why it's considered a magazine. It's a fucking 400-page book about the industry, talking about games, computer setups, etc. It's pretty neat. I am excited to continue this franchise because I know where it's going to end up with modern Persona games, and those rock. I picked up Front Mission without knowing anything about it while I was in Japan back in 2016. To be honest with you, I just liked the font on the cartridge, and if you're going to take the time to present your game in such an aesthetically pleasing way, then you've sold it to me. Much later down the road, I realized that Front Mission is a legacy franchise from Square, a tactical RPG, which at the time, the only one I had played was Bahamut Lagoon, which I did enjoy, tremendously actually. I think I even mentioned it in the 10 games I wish had a sequel episode. Outside of that, I don't really know much about this franchise. I know that it involves robots, I know that G-Craft worked along Square with it, and that there are 17 games in the series, so I have my work cut out for me if I want to enter this long-standing franchise. I do enjoy robot games though, so it's always been something that's piqued my mind. Have you played it? Let me know down below. Oh boy, Fatal Fury. I physically cannot fucking stand Fatal Fury. It can be described by 2 words. Billy Kane. Fuck that guy. I struggled to complete all of the Fatal Fury games up to 3. I was just getting bodied by the gimmicky Neo Geo era mechanics, and I really didn't have an alternate because Takara would rather smoke crack than make a game that's remotely enjoyable. Chalk it up to toy makers trying to make video games. It doesn't tend to pan out, nor has it historically. Right, THQ? But Fatal Fury 3 is my next Fatal Fury game, and it's also the only Neo Geo CD game that I own. I've never even seen footage of this game, much less played it. I don't recall ever seeing Fatal Fury in the arcades growing up, so to me, this has been a relatively recent experience. Way back in 2015, while I was in the Air Force, one of my friends, my coworkers, confided in me that he used to have a retro gaming collection and that it was stolen from him. The game that he swore by was The Legend of Dragoon, and he mentioned that his version was a release that had a colored disc, but the only disc he could find was the black and white version. So, me being me, I put my head to the ground and from sheer dumb luck, ended up at a game trading night with Rad Junk. That's a store that I go to all the time down here in Fort Walton Beach. On trade night, there was a guy selling The Legend of Dragoon, and it had the colored discs, and I basically said, here's $50, and left owning the copy knowing I was going to make my coworker's day a little bit better. And I did. He was elated. In response, he gave me a game, Inuyasha, a Feudal Fairytale, which I have checked out for like maybe 3 minutes to see if it worked or if I needed to resurface the disc, so I know it's a fighting game based on the manga, and supposedly it's like stupid hard, but time will tell. I love difficult fighting games, so who knows, maybe you'll see this on a top 10 list. You ever hear a game mentioned in conversation with someone, they ask if you've played it and you say not yet, and then their face contorts like a baby hand is growing out of your forehead? That's the kind of experience I have when people talk to me about Parasite Eve. I know of it. I've seen people play it. I've even dabbled with a translation of the book from Hideaki Senna to kind of understand what it's all about. But the one shortcoming I have with playing this is that I recall seeing it have the Sphere of Influence combat model. And that ruined my day with Vagrant Story, which really pissed me off because Vagrant Story looked cool as hell. Now that I own it, I try to go out of my way to avoid watching my friends play it because I don't want to deny myself the potential of experiencing an awesome game for the first time. I remember Twisted Metal vividly from my childhood. I was never allowed to play it, but I did watch my uncle play it, right? By the time I was able to explore the Twisted Metal franchise, it was 2012, and the reboot had come out. Needless to say, the reboot wasn't anything in comparison to the gritty and unfair combat that was present on the PS1. Sure, it had the shock factor, but at that point in the PS3's library, nothing was surprising to me. I was so desensitized to violence in video gaming that it almost felt like they were trying too hard. I went out and bought it though, and for the most part it's only collected dust. I do want to play this, and I know it probably won't be the best game ever, but that's okay. Games don't need to be the second coming of Dick Cheney's hunting career to be interesting to me. This is a game that I swear by, and I've played it extensively, but I've never played it on Twitch, right? In fact, it's been almost 23 years since I've played it. God damn, I feel old. This was my guilty pleasure rental from Blockbuster, and I always thought this game was the shit, and I never really understood how to play it, or where to go, or what to do. I had the attention span of a bag of chips, so I would play it, escape to that world I could never go to, and then I'd move on. It's a shame that I never buckled down to beat it, but that's just how our childhoods go. We move on. Nowadays, I have a while to get to it because I actually enjoy the other games in the Goemon series, and I've taken the task of playing them all in order. I think the next one for me is the second release on the Famicom, but I'd have to check. Almost every game in this franchise is incredibly fun, so if you want to check them out, I do suggest that you do. But Mystical Ninja, starring Goemon, is probably the one I would recommend. It's significantly more open world than Goemon's Great Adventure. I own a few 32X games. Many of them are as shitty as a hangover with no water, aspirin, or hope, right? It's bad. But one standout title that I dipped my toes into a while back, probably in like year 2 of streaming, was Knuckles Chaotix. Which, if I remember, it was pretty good, probably one of the best games on the 32X, even though it failed, but let's be honest, the 32X was doomed to fail from the beginning. It was a massive wasted opportunity for quite a few of the games that were on it. In the game, at least from what I remember, we play as Knuckles, and we have this nifty little partner system where we're tied to them by way of rings, and we can use rubber band physics to progress through the stages. I'd love to crack this one open again, but my next game is Sonic 3D Blast on the Saturn, and I don't know if I want to tackle the spin-offs right now. Sonic itself is a massive franchise. It's Sega's money pit, right? It just keeps providing money, even though Sonic Team smokes crack all day. So I don't know how I want to handle it. I think for right now, I'm going to focus on mainline Sonic releases before branching off. Sounds more effective to me. My first Lord of the Rings game was The Two Towers, which is a hack and slash from Stormfront Studios. It's an incredibly difficult game too. I didn't really enjoy it, and for a long time, I decided to step away from playing video game adaptations of The Lord of the Rings, period. But I was told that the franchise took a rather interesting turn with the later adaptations of at least Peter Jackson's films. Now, I do approach these in a unique manner. Usually when I talk about rules of release, I play every game in the order of their release for a franchise. But there is a distinct difference between the storytelling elements of Tolkien and the movie adaptations from Peter Jackson. At least how it comes to video games, how they're presented. So for me, I divided them into 2 different sets of games. For the original line, I need to play Lord of the Rings Game 1 for DOS. And for Peter Jackson, I'm cracking open the old copy of Two Towers to see how it goes. I hope someday to take on War in the North, though, as a more modern spin on the games that are based on the film. I look forward to it, especially Shadow of Mordor. And that's it for today's episode. Have you played any of the games that I've mentioned today? If so, feel free to tell the community down below. I'd love to read it, and I do respond to every comment, even the mean ones. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home in our community. We're a group of people who love remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live. And personally, I'd love to have you join my little retro gaming journey. Finally, the most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortefyre out.